Hello everybody, happy Wednesday. Hope you're all doing well, especially if you're living in Texas right now or anywhere that's getting crazy cold weather. To be honest, here in Utah, at least in Salt Lake City, things aren't abnormal. We were actually way behind on our snowfall, so we're kind of welcoming the weather we've gotten, but it hasn't been ridiculously cold. We're just getting some snow. I'm just sitting in my car in my truck letting it warm up, but it's snowing out there. But we'll take it. I'm a skier. Park City could use more snow. So if you're in Salt Lake City, you're probably doing all right, but if you're somewhere else where a catastrophe has hit, and I hope that you're making do. I'm seeing a lot of people talk about how we need to nationalize the power industry, and we wouldn't be having these issues if we were on all wind and solar. And it's just funny because I don't think any of these people have worked in the power industry at all or have any understanding of how any of it works. So I'm definitely not an expert, but I have studied power delivery and I worked in the industry for 7 years. I had to take some courses because I was studying to basically become a lineman. So I took like 2 years of the course on electrical theory and power delivery, and I worked off and on for 7 years in the industry, so you actually see how it works. And that was all in New Hampshire. So I want to address first the idea of nationalizing it and just centralizing the control. That's so dumb. Power delivery and working in that industry is actually what made me become more of a libertarian, because I saw what a disaster it was, because you had a few people making decisions for vast swaths of the grid, and it was stupid. I remember I was on a storm repair in Connecticut, and I had 6 or 7 poles on the pole trailer behind the digger truck, and we would drive by like 50 broken poles, and we weren't allowed to just go over and start fixing them because everything was through centralized command. It had to come from the top down, and they wouldn't just send us out and have us fix whatever we found. And this was for, I'm going to try to not drop any names here because I just don't want to get anyone in trouble, but this is for like the biggest utility in New England. And you guys can do your research and see what the name is, but they run basically all of New England. And the more companies they bought out and the more government-like they became, so in other words, the more guaranteed income they had and less competition they had, the worse they got by far. There was just like zero recourse for if they fucked something up because they're too big to fail. So when a storm would happen, they could take 3 weeks to get everyone back in power, and they wouldn't really care because FEMA would kick in after a certain date, and you would see production just go right down the tubes. They just wouldn't care because they were not going to lose any income. They were basically subsidized by the federal government because it was an emergency, and they had thousands of us in the state of Connecticut. We were there for like 9 days, and they wouldn't let anyone go home. And I was just sitting in a parking lot for, like 3 days doing nothing. And they wouldn't let any of us leave. They wouldn't let us just go out and start fixing stuff because, as I said, it was all centralized. And there was a point where the governor and the head of I almost said the name, the head of this company were going to be coming through Connecticut. And so they actually called all of us and told us to start driving around in circles with our strobe lights on so that it looked like we were busy because we'd been sitting around for 3 days. And then finally, after enough time goes by, they sent us home. But there would be like 200 outages left, and there would be 10,000 of us in the state just sitting around waiting for something to do. Now contrast that with the co-op in New Hampshire, like the smaller, more district-run utility that didn't have a massive monopoly and wasn't as centrally planned. When we would work for them, they would basically just send us out to where they knew outages were, but if we found something along the way, they would just let us fix it. And that just worked way better. We'd have the storms cleaned up faster. It was a smoother system. We knew what we needed, and our needs were met pretty much immediately, where with the other company, it was just a fucking disaster. And you know, I worked for a private contractor, so we had to show up on time. We had to do a good job. We had to work hard, or they wouldn't call us again. And you know, that's how it is in the contractor world. You got to do the best job for the most reasonable price, and they'll hire you. The utilities do not have to act that way. It doesn't matter what they do. They have a guaranteed income, so there's no competition, and they will not sink. You know, they just stay afloat. So it really drove home the idea of the possibility of loss sinking your business is what's going to keep you competitive. So the idea that we should nationalize everything is just really, really stupid. Because you know, these companies are bad enough at running themselves. You want to put something that's even less efficient in charge of them and centralize power even more, and just cause all these stupid regulations and barriers to go even higher. You're just going to have more disparity than you already do. The other thing is solar and wind. You know, solar works really well in California, or somewhere where the sun shines all the time. In New Hampshire, where there aren't a lot of fields that you can put solar panels, first of all, and where the sun will be gone for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, it doesn't make sense. You know, what does make sense is hydropower. And hydropower nearby in the province of Quebec, where they make 500% of the power that they need to power Quebec. So that was a few hundred miles away from New Hampshire, and there was a deal made with Hydro-Quebec that we were going to run power lines up northern New Hampshire into Quebec, and those dams that were already there could power, I think, pretty much all of New Hampshire, and it was going to go to Connecticut and Massachusetts too. And guess who shot it down? The Greenies, because they didn't want to cut down 8 miles of trees to run these power lines up through northern New Hampshire. And there was a little bit of bipartisan opposition, but it was mostly led by environmentalists who were saying that it was, you know, stupid and we don't need this. So there was a coal plant there in New Hampshire that we had temporarily shut down, and we opened it back up once this project was shut down. You know, we're still burning natural gas, still burning wood chips. All of that really could have been shut down, but because these greenies didn't want to cut down 8 miles of trees, the whole thing collapsed. So a lot of these people screaming for solar and wind, they're letting euphoria destroy actual progress. You know, they have this euphoric idea of what a country that's just completely run off of wind and solar could look like, and they're shutting down actual progress we could be making. Because I am someone who really does care a lot about the environment. You know, I took 2 years off, traveled all around the country, went to most of the national parks, saw many of our natural beauties we have here. I really care about nature, especially in this country, and the fact that we burn as much coal as we still do is sad. I think we should be trying to move beyond that. But the people standing in our way are the environmentalists. You know, I had Dave Smith on my show. That's probably why a lot of you guys have subscribed to me. But he was talking about how JP Morgan Chase had thrown the scent off to the left, who was opposing them, by embracing cancel culture or wokeism or whatever, and opposing microaggressions or whatever. And so he basically made the case that the corporate right wing had co-opted the cause of the left. And I think he's totally right. And that's also what Murray Rothbard said about the progressive era. I think that's also true. That's also happening with this. I mean, the reason that coal and gas are, still have so much control is because we're not investing in things like nuclear, or we're having instances like we did in New Hampshire with the Northern Pass where that gets shut down. So the greenies are actually the biggest allies to big oil and coal, because they stay in power because actual alternatives are not being presented, and they're being opposed by the people who want progress. So everything that's going on right now is just hilariously ironic to me. And if you, I wish I could pull the chart up, but I was just looking at a chart of Texas, and I think they're already run off like 80% natural gas and nuclear. But AOC was saying, see, if we actually had a Green New Deal, we wouldn't have power outages right now. But if you look at the graph, once the weather started causing problems, the amount of energy that's being produced by solar and wind shrinks to almost nothing, because the solar fields and the wind farms have basically been shut down throughout all of this because they don't work in this type of weather. So, I just challenge people, if you're going to scream about green energy and you're going to scream about climate change, just actually do a little bit of research as to what could help with the problem, and stop just screaming about nationalizing the industry and going green on everything, because you probably don't really know what you're talking about. I'm going to try to have someone on to talk about this. Kevin Hobby is a friend of mine. I just did an interview on his show last night. He knows a lot about the natural gas industry and what's going on in Texas specifically. So I'm going to try to get him on and have a conversation about this. Should be really interesting. But I just want to say, anyone out there who's in Texas, or anywhere that's getting hit hard, I hope you're doing well. Just keep taking care of each other, taking care of yourselves, as I always say on the show, because obviously no one else is going to do it. But I got to get going to work. It's going to be fun driving in this today, but I'm just doing one delivery, bringing an excavator about 40 miles, and that's it. I got Carrie Wedler coming on the show tomorrow evening, as long as everything works out. I just talked with her last night, and everything's looking good. If you guys have any questions you want me to ask her, throw them in the comments, and I will definitely put those to her. But thank you for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next live stream or the next episode. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves.